And welcome to our podcast, Two Guys on Politics. I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski.
And it's August 31st, 2023. This is season 2, episode 5. And we're going to talk about all related stuff, the little aftermath of the Republican debate and the candidates and the absence of former President Donald Trump. And then what can we expect in the upcoming presidential election next year? So, Bill, how did you feel about the Republican debate of all those candidates minus Donald Trump?
Well, I thought that Nikki Haley showed to be the best. I thought that she was firm. She was well informed, and I thought she delivered things very well. And it seems like I wasn't the only one that felt that way. The vast majority of people that reviewed the debate seemed to think that she gained the most out of that debate. The Indian gentleman who
Ramaswamy.
Yeah, that's the man.
He has a rough name.
Yeah, it's a tough name. A lot of young people were very much impressed with him. I thought he was way off beam on most things. I thought his foreign policy was very, very poor, very, very unrealistic. I think he's a very intelligent fella. He speaks very well. He speaks very fast. But I think the longer he's around, the more and more people will see him for what he is. And I think to a certain degree, he's a individual that cannot go too far in politics because he really doesn't tell the truth too often. I thought Mike Pence, the former vice president, came off better than I expected him to. By the same token, I don't think he gained any ground because I don't really think there's much of a constituency in the Republican Party for Mike Pence, primarily because the Trumpers feel that he stabbed President Trump in the back, so they are not only opposed to him, they are strenuously opposed to him. I think that that's enough of mine for now.
No, that's okay. That's all right. I was gonna. I mean, we could. If you have more, your observations, go ahead and do it.
Okay. I was very disappointed in Senator Scott. I have had dinner with him. I was impressed with him when I had dinner with him. But I thought in the debate, he seemed to be very nervous. And he just seemed to, do nothing but hit talking points. That disappointed me quite a bit. Chris Christie, I'm very high on him. I think he's very articulate. I think he's very strong. I think he's very straightforward. But be it as anti-Trump as he is, not that I'm any less, is not going to help him. He's going to have to be in a situation where it comes down to him and Trump in the primaries, and I don't really know if he could ever get to that particular point. It's your
I was going to say that when I was looking at it, I wasn't very impressed by Chris Christie. He fits the image that I've seen of him over the last 6 years, going back and forth. I think he's always been jealous of Trump. And I don't think I can get past that image because his issues, I don't think, are really clear or innovative or new. He's a smart guy. And he did have the best line, I think, of the whole thing. He said that when he was talking about that Vivek Ramaswamy, he said that he kind of criticized Ramaswamy by saying that he's tired of a candidate who sounds like Chat GPT, the artificial intelligence thing where you could ask ChatGPT a question and it gives you these really coherent responses that seem to make sense, but don't always make sense. So besides that line, I wasn't very impressed with him. I was least impressed with the former Vice President Mike Pence. He's the same boring candidate, no new ideas. I think that he defines himself as trying to present himself as the Trump alternative. He's different from Trump, more stable than Trump, more common sense than Trump, but he doesn't have any energy. It sounds like he's, just, he talks about how I'm the only one here with all the experience that knows what to do, but I don't think he was a very good vice president. So I wasn't impressed by him either. Nikki Haley, I've known her for years. I've followed her, being Arab American. I think she's always been anti-Arab, in her positions. Because of that extremism, in my view, I think she puts Israel above everybody. I think she'd be a great candidate if she wanted to run in Tel Aviv, for president of Israel. But I don't think that advocacy for a foreign country, as much as she's made it a part of her foreign policy, is something that I want to see in our next president. You're right about that Vivek Ramaswamy. Go ahead.
So far, we haven't agreed on a candidate.
No, we haven't. No, we haven't. Well, I was going to.
That's good.
No, that's true. I mean, we're giving our honest opinions because as voters, everybody's going to react. That Vivek Ramaswamy obviously is very pro-Arab. He believes, or at least not so much pro-Arab, but he believes that we've made too much financial commitments to Israel, and Israel has too much sway in our government. The pro-Israel lobby is probably the biggest single contributor of campaign financing, for candidates at the congressional level. They spend hundreds of millions of dollars to influence the election, and he thinks that should all be looked at more closely. And I agree with him, but I didn't like his, lack of support for the Ukraine, which I think is sometimes a popular thing. But Nikki Haley stood up for Ukraine, and I thought that was good for her. And then there was Tim Scott. I didn't think he made a very big impression at all. He didn't, when you look at a debate, you look for people to stand out. He didn't stand out. Ron DeSantis, another big name that I thought, wow, this guy, this is his chance to take the leadership of the Republican Party. He did a terrible job myself. And so I'm just not sure and there are a bunch of other candidates. I mean, we can go through them all, but I don't see anybody that is strong enough to take out Donald Trump other than the U.S. attorney.
I was going to throw that in. I was going to say the same thing. The U.S. attorney might be able to handle that problem.
He should have been in the debate. But the polling shows Trump still, with the largest support among Republican voters, according to the polls.
Absolutely.
And I think he's made it clear he's not going to participate in any of the Republican debates. I guess I wouldn't either. As long as his polling numbers are high, it doesn't do him any good after he's been indicted in 4 separate indictments on charges of corruption and racketeering. Those are not things that you put on a campaign piece of campaign literature to encourage votes, but his supporters don't care about that. And I think his supporters are still pretty significant.
Are you? No,
Go ahead. It's all right. Go ahead. Say it. It's all right.
No, I was going to say that so far I agree with you. The only thing that's going to stop Trump from getting the Republican nomination is to be indicted, but he's already been indicted. But to be convicted.
Right.
If he's not convicted on any of these, he certainly is going to get the nomination. Even if he is convicted on some of these, and there's no way to stop him from being on the ballot because he has been convicted of a felony, he'll be the Republican candidate. As strange as it might seem, that's where we're at the present time.
Yeah, and obviously that doesn't hurt the Democratic candidate, Joe Biden,
Not
who
at
is
all.
obviously running for re-election, being challenged by a couple candidates. Probably the most significant would be Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the son of the former U.S. attorney and candidate who was assassinated in 1968, and the brother of a great president. And, JFK was a great president only because he was assassinated and nobody wanted to criticize his policies. But had he not been assassinated, I'm not sure he would have been revered as much as he is, as and the tragedy that has become his, legacy since
I
then.
totally agree with you.
Yeah, it's there are a lot of interesting things that when you get assassinated, nobody talks about
Right.
your infidelity in office and how you would, schmooze women, which I think today would be big issues, as we saw with President Trump, right? Suddenly the gauntlet was thrown down with him. Every president has done something. There have been rumors about stuff and infidelity.
Sure hurt Trump, didn't it?
But with
I
him,
said,
yeah,
sure. Sure hurt him.
yes, I think it did
That's
hurt him. I think that was the worst part of, although he has a terrible personality, and he's not going to change. Donald Trump has made it clear he's going to be the same Trump that he was when he was president. Good ideas, but no focus on those ideas. It'll be all on who he hates, who he wants to stomp on, who he wants to respond to, and he'll just be one conflict after another with the mainstream news media, which I think provokes it, which they're unfair. I think the media has always been, unfair, and they're worse today than they were before.
I agree with that, even though I'm not a member of the media. I have to concur with you.
Well, you are a member of the media now.
Oh, that's right. I am.
Podcast.
Yes.
You are.
Did I
Shame
write
on
my
you, Bill.
column? Yeah, I
Yeah, and
forgot
you
about that. Yes.
You write your column. You write your column. And a good column too, by the way. And people who want to read your column, go to suburbanchicagoland.com, and they're all listed there with my columns and your columns. And they could. We're upfront. We're not pandering to any candidates. We're not pushing anybody for favors. We're telling people exactly what we believe. What do you think? Trump is. They announced his first trial is going to be in March next year. And there are going to be more Republican debates over the next, 8 months. We're going to see the same old, aren't we, from the Republicans, and maybe even worse.
Looks like it. If the first debate is any indication, it looks like it. I think they've established their positions, and I think they'll continue the campaign on those positions. I hope that Senator Scott wakes up for the next debate and contributes something to it. I really think that the former vice president has gained a little bit more status, but I agree with you. He does not have a charismatic personality. So I really don't see him getting a shot, at the.
And him looking better is a reflection of how bad everybody else was. Believe me.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That is very true. I agree. And DeSantis, I just cannot see DeSantis at all. So
yeah, he missed his shot, didn't he? By not coming out in this first debate in a forceful way, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I agree with that. Absolutely.
And but you think Nikki Haley, out of all of them, if you had to put all the Republicans together, who would you say is at the top? Your favored, Well,
my favorite is Chris Christie, but the one who I thought did the best was Nikki Haley.
So what if they had a Nikki Haley and Chris Christie team? One of them running for president, one of them running for vice president. That could be pretty strong, couldn't it?
I think that'd be very strong. Yes, absolutely. And I would be happy to not only vote for that team, but to campaign for that team.
And if Nikki Haley softened her view on the Middle East, I might be able to support her, because I do agree with you on this aspect. If I take out the Middle East, and we all have issues that we feel are cornerstones to our beliefs, and obviously for me, it's the Middle East. But if she had moderated her view on the Middle East, more open to peace, more fairness, I think she could be a good candidate. I'm just not sure that she, could be strong enough, though, to beat Biden.
Oh, I think she could be strong enough to beat Biden. I question that Biden can beat anybody else on the Republican side other than Donald Trump.
So you think that Trump is probably the one candidate for sure, if it was a Biden-Trump contest, that Biden would definitely win.
Yes, I do. Yes, because I just cannot see enough of the American people, voting for a man who's been indicted in 4 different jurisdictions. And by that time, I think will have been convicted in 1 or 2 of them.
Well, with all the candidates running, I would agree with you, but with all the different Republicans going after him. But once the Republican convention is over, do you think any of these Republicans would stand up and do a Liz Cheney, where they'd backstab him and the Republican Party the way she did? Because that's my view of her. She's just an opportunist, backstabber, and the daughter of a war criminal who should have been prosecuted for lying about Iraq. Her father, the former vice president, Dick Cheney. But, when all is said and done and all the Republicans realize, let's say, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but if all these Republican candidates lose and Trump does get the nomination, how many of them do you think are going to support him as the head of the Republican Party?
I think the only one that has said he wouldn't vote for him is Chris Christie. I don't know if anybody else has said that.
And there's a personal thing between them, isn't it? That it sounds more like a personal thing.
A lot of people say that. I personally don't think so, but I wasn't really there. I can't tell you. Some people say it's because he wasn't offered Secretary of State or because he wasn't offered Attorney General. And he counters by saying there was 4 different offices that he was offered and he turned them all down.
You think
twice he turned the Chief of Staff job.
Do you think if
I believe Christie.
do you think that Mike Pence would endorse Trump if it looked like obviously that he's going to be and I'm not saying he is, but if we're clear that he won, if he wins the nomination for Republican president, you think somebody like Mike Pence would support him after everything he's tried to say and do?
Mike Pence said he wouldn't support him. I don't think Nikki Haley has said she wouldn't support him. I do honestly believe the only one that has said that has been Chris Christie.
Okay. So going into it, I mean, if the Republicans are unified behind a very terrible candidate, Donald Trump, you still don't think that they would be formidable enough to stand up to Biden?
No, I do
challenge him. What's so strong about Biden that he's not Trump?
I don't think that's the best thing he has going for him. It's not Trump. And also the fact that at the present time, I don't expect him to have been indicted or convicted of any felony in this country. So I think he's got that going for him.
What about the name Biden being convicted or indicted, which would be his son, Hunter Biden? They did everything they could to grease that investigation and squeeze it through. If Jane Byrne were around today, she'd be raising holy hell about that, the way she did about the taxi cab, greasing the taxi cab contract back in 1978. But I think that Hunter Biden case is going to hurt him if it ever gets to the point where people finally get to hear what his son really did. I just don't believe Biden when he says that he never did anything to help his son when he was vice president, because logically, if you go back to when he was vice president and Ukraine was giving and China were giving his son contracts, nobody would have thought that that was of any significance back then. Suddenly today it is. So I don't think he would have not helped his son.
Was Joe Biden vice president at the time his son got those contracts, or was Joe just a plain ordinary citizen?
No, he was the vice president when Hunter Biden was soliciting these contracts, reaching out to Ukraine, reaching out to China. His company was, growing. The Bidens have tried to squeeze it into that narrow period between when he was vice president and when he became president, claiming, oh, that's the only time he ever helped his son. That's where I think the problem is And that to me is like a Watergate moment waiting to get broken. I think there's a lot of evidence, and they won't have to fabricate that Russian dossier that they released on Trump. They won't have to fake up one on Biden. I think there's a real story out there. And at some point, I think there's still enough time for that story to break and hurt him.
Well, I must be reading too many liberal, progressive, democratic publications, because that's not my understanding. But I could be wrong. I'm not perfect.
The liberal media is not reporting, and you've seen, I mean, you at least would have to agree that
I agree with
the
that.
liberal media has been downplaying this for years, and it's only come up now because the Republicans have taken over, the House, and they've initiated investigations, and now they can't stop it. But they did everything they could to stop it. Miranda Devine over at, I think it was the New York Post, I think she's at. And just in full disclosure, I knew her father, Frank Devine. He was one of the editors at the Sun-Times who I worked with and I thought was phenomenal. I didn't get a chance to meet his daughter, but she's done some great stories about Hunter Biden that have not been investigated by the mainstream media yet. And I think they're going to come up. But anyway, that I think is a potential soft spot. Maybe it won't be, for Biden.
Is the Washington Post a mainstream publication?
I would think yes, mainstream and very far left. Look at CNN, very far left is, yes.
The Washington Post is very far left?
Yes, I consider them to be very far left based on their antagonism.
You're correct. I was thinking about the New York Post.
Oh, yeah, no. The New York Post, and if I'm thinking of the right newspaper, is very conservative. Absolutely. I'm not being, I would say that there is no objective media in this country other than two guys on politics,
I agree.
Bill Lipinski and Ray Hanania.
You see how much they agree on things.
But there's nobody addressing the media today either. There used to be 20, 30 years ago, people that would do very objective analysis of the media and they'd hammer the media. Today, there's none of that. And so I don't think the American people get the complete story. So it's whatever you believe. You pick the paper you want to read.
I wonder how much people, rely upon the media for facts anymore. I seriously question that.
Well, they don't rely, I don't think they rely on it for truth the way they may have used to. But where else are you going to go? Right now, it's either the mainstream media or social media, which is like a pack of geese gaggling, saying anything that, people say or want to say. You just put it out there on social media and suddenly it's the truth because somebody just published it. You don't have to be a journalist, to actually write stories. I mean, the comparison would be, I used to watch TV shows about doctors. What was that one doctor program in the 50s and 60s that was very popular? I wish I could think of the name at the moment. Yeah, I think that was it. I watched it all the time, and I felt I watched it enough that I could be a doctor. I did not need to be a doctor and go to medical school. I just saw him perform so many surgeries. I could do the exact same thing. That's what's happening in today's society with people thinking they can be journalists. They see, hey, I can type A, B, C, and D and form words and nouns and verbs and adjectives. And hey, I don't need a degree. I can just do this from my hip. So, one thing I wanted to ask you, Bill, and get your opinion on, if it looks like Biden were to have problems and he had to do something, my theory was that maybe he could find a stronger vice president. But you don't think that would be possible, that he would never do that no matter what?
Correct. I do. Unless she was indicted someplace along the line, which I don't think is going to happen. No, I don't think he changes vice presidents. I don't think he can change vice presidents. He cannot remove a African-American woman from the vice presidency and expect the African-American vote to vote for him once again. He would have to, choose some other African-American And I don't know, even if he did that, I don't know that that would satisfy the African American community if he got rid of his present vice president. The only person he might be able to choose, and I do not believe that she would accept it, but it would be Michelle Obama. It's about the only one that he could pick that he wouldn't lose the African American vote.
See, I think that Kamala Harris could be indicted for things like giddiness, bad dancing, and not and just yapping too much about things that make absolutely no sense. I can't think of one significant issue that the vice president represents in the 2.5 years that she has been in office as President Biden's vice president. At least with Michelle Obama, you go back to other first ladies and vice presidents. They all have different roles. Even the first husbands. That there are all kinds of different roles, and I think that she hasn't defined herself in any way. Is she just selling herself as an African American and a woman, and that's all Biden needs? I mean,
yes.
what makes her so great, right? That's sad though, right? That gender
Yes,
and race.
Yeah, I'm surprised that she hasn't, been a better vice president for him. After all, she was a U.S. Senator from California. She was the Attorney General of California. So the woman must be talented. She must be smart. I don't know what happened to her when she became vice president, but I mean, she's about as forceful a personality, as far as I'm concerned, as your good friend, former Vice President Pence.
I can't think of anything that Pence really represented during the Trump administration, other than a guy who was pushed in a corner all the time and somewhat embarrassed by what was happening.
I mean, she was, to the best of my knowledge, she was put in charge of the border. Do you remember that?
I vaguely remember that, and
well,
I think that
nothing. I don't know if she ever got to the border, quite frankly. No, I'm serious.
And,
I mean,
and the border's a mess. And if she
Yes.
is, the border is still a mess. Migrants, asylum seekers, illegal aliens coming in. This immigration issue is worse now than it's ever been. It's just getting worse. And they interchange words like asylum seeker to make it more acceptable to allow somebody to come in. And I'm thinking, oh, suddenly they give a label. But in the end, it's still people who are coming in without going through the legal process. I'm not against immigrants coming into this country. Do it in a legal way so we can vet you and ensure that you're not involved in organized crime, because there are a lot of Mexican drug dealers that keep trying to come into this country and would love to get citizenship so they can sell more of their drugs.
Absolutely. No, but I don't think she can be replaced.
Not at all.
A lot of people say that if it is Biden and Trump, they would like to have a third party choice. And I think that's a great idea. And I hope the no labels people go through what they're planning. My problem with them is that they're going to have a convention in April of next year to select their candidate for president and vice president. They're going to pick a Democrat and then a Republican. Now, I think that's awful late to pick a president and vice president. That's number one. Number two, all this time they continue to say, well, we will only field a third party if it is Trump and Biden. I think their attitude should be, we're going to field a third party no matter who the candidates are. Either you want to give the American people a third choice or you don't. If you want to give them a third choice, pick your president, vice president as soon as possible so they can start campaigning, start getting to be known.
Now, it's called the No Labels Party that you're talking about. And I remember, we were both around when Ross Perot managed to kind of craft what looked like a pretty formidable third party, presidential candidacy. I think what dragged him down was his accent and those charts that he kind of always showed. Now this chart over here is going to be here, and this is where we're going to be going. But this time, I think a third party has a real chance, because back when Ross Perot was running, the division in the country wasn't so polarized. And he was fighting with reasoned parties on the Republican and the Democratic side. Today, a third party would be fighting with the extremists in the Democratic Party and the extremists in the Republican Party, who have held politics hostage for the last how many years, 6 years or more. So I think a third party may be my only option in terms of a choice. And I hope they do field somebody smart.
I think it will be my only option also. In regards to Ross Perot, there were a number of things that were against him. Number one, I believe, was the fact that he was not a politician. Okay, and there were a lot of things that he did during the campaign that as a businessman may have made him successful, but as a politician, it didn't. But the main thing is what you said, the country was nowhere near as divided as it is today. Yeah, I would like to say I would definitely support a third party, but I have to know who the candidates are, before I can say that. And I know, let me ask you the question. Do you think it's possible to wait until April of next year to get your two candidates and be able to elect them president and vice president of the United States?
Well, I think it might be, and I'll tell you why, because I think it's almost a foregone conclusion that regardless of what process we're going to go through in the primaries, we're going to see Biden is going to be the Democratic candidate, no matter what the Democratic primary does. Although I think Robert F. Kennedy could be a strong candidate if he would just stop going off the cliff with some of his views. And the same thing with the Republicans. No matter what the primaries are, I think Trump has it locked in. And you're probably right. He may not be strong enough to take out Biden, but I think it won't matter, because between now and even August, we know it's going to be Biden and Trump. At least it's almost certain at this point.
Yeah, I agree
So
with
that I think gives the third party a little breathing room to still get their act together. Although I agree with you, if they're going to get in the game, they better start getting in it right away and not wait till the last minute. They need to let people know that they're serious. And so far, they haven't done much to do that.
No. Do you have any idea who Trump would pick this time as his vice president?
I'm going to say probably Rudy Giuliani.
I doubt it. I think he'll be under indictment also.
I don't know if he can get a vice president. He may have to just run by himself. Do you
he may prefer that.
Let me ask you a question. What about the possibility, and this is just remote, and I thought about this briefly, that he gets elected and he has a good vice president, and then he gets convicted and he gets taken out of office? Would it help him if he had a strong vice presidential candidate? Could it strengthen his candidacy with people knowing that he may bring the Republican Party to the White House, but he may not be the person that ushers them through a full 4-year term? It may be his vice president.
I think that's a wonderful idea, but I don't really know if that'll work, Ray. I just it's an awful lot of you're assuming an awful lot with that. But it's possible, but I don't know who's going to run with him. I'm sure you can find somebody.
I don't know who it would be. So, but anyway, Bill, listen, I think we've touched on a lot of stuff. It's been a really interesting discussion, and we'll be back next week. And remember, everybody, this is the Labor Day weekend. I hope everybody has a great Labor Day weekend. It's the beginning of the political season, right? Traditionally, isn't it Labor Day weekend?
Yep, very definitely. So
all right.
This is Bill Lipinski. Until next time, a fellow American.
And I'm Ray Hanania, and we will see you hopefully next week with another episode of Two Guys on Politics. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.